So the first one says Jeff has 1/2 pound of peanuts and he gives an equal amount to Jenny, Dave, and Tom. How many pounds of peanuts does Jenny get? So you see, nowhere in this problem does it say to divide anything. It doesn't say, hey, do the division here. But so you have to know what you're doing here. Essentially, Jeff has a pile of peanuts this big, it's 1/2 pound. And then it says he's giving an equal amount to 3 people. So because he's doing that, by definition, he's dividing up his peanuts into 3 people. So that's what tells you that you're dividing, right? It wouldn't make sense for him to multiply anything because that would be trying to make it bigger or trying to multiply forth. What you're doing is you're taking this much stuff and you're dividing it. You're chopping it up into 3 pieces to give some to each person. So what we really have is we know that Jeff has 1/2 pound of peanuts and he's dividing it into 3 pieces. That's going to be how much Jenny's going to get. Now we've done this kind of problem many times before. First thing we do is we keep the division symbol, but we write this as 3/1. Then we change this to multiplication and we flip this over. Then we multiply the tops. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 3 is 6. So how much? 1/6 of a pound. So that means that if Jeff has 1/2 pound of peanuts and he gives an equal amount to 3 different people, then Jenny, which is one of those people, is going to get 1/6 of a pound. That's how much she's going to have. So it's a very useful skill to be able to divide fractions because this is a very practical kind of problem. You know, you might be dividing up candy or anything else. Now the next problem says that David has 5/6 gallons of paint and he divides it into 4 equal buckets. How much paint is in each bucket? So again, it doesn't tell you that to divide these numbers, but you know that you have so much paint, 5/6 of a gallon, which is almost a gallon, and you're dividing it, well, it says he divides it into 4 equal parts, but I could have written the problem another way, and I could have said, you know, David puts an equal amount into 4 buckets. I could have written it in such a way where it doesn't say divide, but you know what you're doing. You're taking the paint, you're putting some in each bucket so that they're all equal. That means you're dividing. So how much goes in each bucket? Well, you start with 5/6 gallon and you divide by 4 because you're putting it into 4 equal parts. So 5/6, this 4 becomes 4/1. And as we've always been doing before, now we change to multiplication. 5/6, and we multiply. We flip this over to 1/4. And now we can finally multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 6 times 4 is 24. And the answer is 5/24. I can't simplify it anymore, but 5/24 is how much gallons, or how much of a gallon that I'm going to have in that bucket, because I have 4 buckets, and so each bucket is going to have this much paint, 5/24 of a gallon. That means if you take a gallon of paint and chop it in 24 pieces, then that bucket would have 5/24. All right? Now the next problem is also really practical because we're dividing a piece of rope. It says a rope is 5/6 of a meter long and is cut into pieces 1/8 meter in length. How many pieces do I have? So I have a rope, I've measured it. It's not quite a whole meter long, it's 5/6 of a meter long, but I'm cutting it into pieces. So I cut 1/8 of a meter here, and then I cut another 1/8 of a meter, and another 1/8 of a meter, and another 1/8 of a meter, all the way until I get to the end. How many pieces am I able to cut? So again, it doesn't say that I'm dividing these things. It doesn't say, hey, divide these numbers. You have to know that because I'm starting with a long piece of string or rope, and I am cutting it, and I'm chopping it into lots of different pieces of a certain length. So I'm dividing it up. So you get that kind of experience when you work a lot of problems. So if I have 5/6 of a meter, then I'm dividing it. The length that I'm dividing it into is 1/8 of a meter. So how many times will 1/8 go into this length? So first thing you do is you say 5/6. You change this to multiplication and you flip this over to 8/1. And then you multiply. 5 times 8 is 40. And on the bottom, 6 times 1 is 6. And that really is the answer. But you notice that this is a improper fraction. So how many times will 6 go into 40? Well, 5 times 6 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36. So it's about as close as you can get. 6 times, that will give you 36 because 6 times 6 is 36. The difference between 40 and 36 is 4. That's the remainder over 6. So that's the answer, but then I see right away I can divide the top by 2 and the bottom by 2. And so I get 6. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 6 2/3. So what it's saying is I start with this much rope and I chop it into pieces that are this long. How many pieces do I have? I have 6 whole pieces that are this long, and then I have 2/3 of a piece. So I don't quite have 7 whole pieces. I have a little bit left over at the end. So I've chopped an eighth, chopped an eighth, chopped an eighth, chopped an eighth of a meter, and then when I get to the end, I have 6 pieces that are that long, but then I have a little bit left over. I don't have quite 7 pieces. So when you're doing